Afternoon and welcome to Second Chance. Second Chance is a weekly talk show that examines a wide range of social issues and seeks to inspire physical, emotional, social, and spiritual healing, believing that God is a God of second chances, and through faith, all things are possible. Second Chance airs live each week from the beautiful campus of Oakwood University and features real people with real issues and offers real answers. And now, here's your host, Kenneth Anderson.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Second Chance radio broadcast. Excuse me, I was just trying to say program and broadcast all at the same time. It's a program and a broadcast and an opportunity for people from one week to the next to hear messaging around inspiration and, of course, those things that can encourage us and make us just be better and perhaps do good. Second Chance airs every Sunday from 2 until 4 p.m. Central Standard Time right here at Oakwood University's campus. And we're in the studio of, you can see it right back there, Praise 90.1 FM, WJOU. I hope that if you're listening on the radio this afternoon at 90.1 FM in our radio area, that you keep it locked into that dial like we used to say all the time when people just used to listen to radio. We had all these options now. And, of course, there are many, many options that we like to take advantage of. So people are listening this afternoon on the internet at WJOU.org. Welcome to all of you worldwide who are tuning in this afternoon. And, of course, there are some people who absolutely appreciate, value, and embrace the option for live feeding. That's right. We're on the live feed this afternoon at Praise 90.1 FM on both Facebook as well as YouTube. So you can actually see the program today as well as hear it. And of course, we always invite you to not just make comments, but also share information, engage in the conversation that we're going to have this afternoon. Why would I waste any more time bringing in my special guest today? And today's show, by the way, is going to have a lot of fire, folks. I mean, I stacked this show pretty deep today, because it is, of course, the 23rd of June. We are deep into the month of June. Just had summer begin the other day. But, folks, I tell you, for the last week and a half, it felt like even a little more than summer. It has been hot, not just here, but across the nation. So I hope that you're finding ways to be cool. This is really literally killer heat. And I hope that people are mindful about what they're doing in the process of trying to transition into these summer months. A lot of traveling going on and a lot of other things. My very first guest is not really a guest to me anymore because he's just a dude that is making it happen. And I also consider him a great friend at this point because of the investment that he has made in this broadcast. Robert X. Golphin is an American actor. He is a writer, director, author, speaker. He's so much more than that even. But I'm going to stop right there because I'm just so glad to see him on the broadcast today. He's a journalist, also from the great city of Philadelphia. I know a little something about Philadelphia because I have relatives in both North and South Philly as I was growing up. And he's best known for his role as Dunbar Reed in the phenomenal film, The Great Debaters. Now, I'm saying he's well known for that, but he's going to be even more well-known for what we're going to be talking about today. Robert, what's going on, brother?
Hey, man. Thank you so much. Always an honor, privilege, and pleasure to be in your company. And yes, we've known each other for a very long time, although we haven't met physically yet. So hopefully we'll be able to do that soon. But I've got to step my style game up because every time I'm on the show, you're killing with these suits.
You know what's happening sometimes, Robert, and I want to tell my guests I dress up especially for them. Of course, I think I do to some extent because I do know I'm coming to the show. But it's some of that pre-show stuff that's going on as I move around the community. And we got the 13th National Civil Rights conference that came through this past week, and a lot of energy around that. Of course, big Juneteenth celebrations everywhere this past week. And we, of course, are just so excited as we, again, move towards the end of this month to focus on so many positive things. You, of course, have been on the show before talking about your journey into space that I just defined as being an actor, director, writer, journalist, and so much more. But especially so today, I want to say congratulations to you, because you have completed a project that has been a labor of love, a passion, something that you absolutely wanted and felt you needed to do. And I'm so honored to say that not only have you completed it, but I may have played a small part in that process. But it's not about me today. It's about celebrating you, Robert, for what you've done with this project called Chest Candy. First of all, congratulations on the project.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Tell us a little bit about, because people are going to be hearing about it for sure. They're going to hear about it on this broadcast. They're going to hear about it on social media. They're going to hear about it in other media sources as well. Tell us what Chest Candy is as a project for you.
Well, yes, I'm excited to share that our upcoming motion picture short, Chest Candy, has wrapped filming and will enter the post-production phase, which is the industry term for editing, in August. Chest Candy is a slice of life psychological drama centering on a young Army veteran's experiences with PTSD and how that affects his family, his wife, his child, and other folks in his life. And I've assembled a fantastic team of actors. In addition to being the writer-director, I'm playing that soldier in the film, but I'm joined by a cast that includes award winner Lauren Michelle Morgan, who starred in my feature film Freshman Friday, Antoinette Green, who played the mayor on the HBO miniseries We Own This City, a Broadway veteran named Joey Collins, who has a film out now called There Is a Monster, and child actor and model Ariana Pratt. And it's the film centers on mental health, and not just the mental health of the soldier, but also in a way the mental health of the family as they're kind of coping and navigating with everything that he's going through and everything they're going through because of him. So it's a very important project, I think, and something that I've been trying to do for over 2 years. And, we had one budget that was higher at one point, couldn't really get the financing for that. And so me and my team decided to, as I always say, not wait for the industry to knock on the door with opportunity and just go out and try to make it happen on our own. But, sometimes when you want work that best reflects what you can do and has work that's elevated, you sometimes need a little help. So we decided to experiment with crowdfunding using the platform Seed and Spark. And because of contributors like yourself, we were able to meet our goal of raising just a little over what our initial goal was to help defray production costs. And so here we are. We've shot it, and I can't wait to get the film out into the world.
Wow. Well, listen, congratulations on this first or this next stage in the process, because clearly getting the funding is the first step before you actually get to film it. Now that you filmed it, I want to talk to you a little bit about that in just a moment, and then what the next step is. How can people that are listening this afternoon support what you're doing? Because the subject matter is so important. And Robert, I'm going to tell you, respect for you with a K on the end, and that's a big K on the end, because you practice what you preach. You have said on this broadcast so often that the value, a part of the value, a huge part of the value that you have found in acting is telling the story the way you need the story told, and telling a story that may be overlooked or marginalized in some way, and bringing it into that inner sanctum that we call film viewing from the general public that gets a chance to see these finished products. And so once again, shout out to you for staying true to that process. Mental health, of course, is something that I am hugely familiar with. And people that know me know that. You know that. I'm a mental health professional. And
one of the film's consultants.
Yeah, well, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. And that was an honor, too, to be able to share a few thoughts and ideas around the work and the foundation that was being laid for that. That was pretty exciting for me, actually. I'd never done anything like that before and been invited to be a part of anything like that. So thank you again. I'm just going to thank you through this whole show.
Okay.
Robert, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're always talking about how do we destigmatize this experience that so many people have, and how do we have important and meaningful and significant and transformational conversations about this topic. Well, we know storytelling has to be a part of that, and making movies about this is extremely important. Talk to me about that element of what drove you to this particular space and this particular subject matter.
Yes, absolutely. So I initially came up with a scene for an acting reel many years ago, a 30-second scene where I played a soldier who was battling demons in his mind. And I put that 30-second clip out several years ago and had so much feedback from people, including veterans, saying how much it affected them. And it just stuck with me for years after that I'm supposed to be doing something more with it. It's not just a scene. There's something behind it. There's something that will provoke conversation and hopefully empathy amongst people who maybe are in the thick of it with someone who is navigating their mental health, or someone who just isn't aware of how they can be helpful to someone that may be going through, tough times of an elevated nature. And so I started writing the script during the pandemic, and it kept evolving. And even up to the time that we started filming, there were different changes that would be made, especially after talking to the film's consultants. But I don't come from a military family, but I have a lot of family members that have served, some that are still with us, some that are not. And, my grandfather was in the service. And so I've always had an affinity for it, a respect for it, just knowing that it's a tough job. And I know that even people that have served can sometimes question, well, why am I doing this? Should I be doing this? And so I wanted to kind of allude to a lot of those different things in the film without overloading people. And, I think my preparation for playing the role, but also even in writing the script, has included many conversations with Army and Navy veterans, in addition to watching endless hours of interviews with and documentaries with service people, veterans, military families, combat training, civilian rifle training, at least for this first half of the year, 5 to 6 months. So it's been heavy. It's been educational. It's been emotional. I had to wear a lot of hats on set, but there were some times where I really could disappear into that character and kind of feel the world that they were in and going through. Even one of my co-stars said, they had made a certain acting choice in the scene, and I didn't know that they did it until I looked at the footage, because I was just in a different place. And they said, yeah, I saw that you were, before the cameras even rolled, you were somewhere else. And so I think it was really important for me to try to go as close as I could. Obviously, I can never walk in a person's shoes that is going through that, but I hope that it translates on screen. So it was just really important to me that I get it as right as I could, if that makes sense.
Well, listen, you said something, and that's amazing, by the way. I just think that the relevance of that subject matter is just so critical today. We talk so much about mental illness, mental health, and wellness. Talk so much about the necessity of those things, but I don't always think that we have the critical mass of information that we need to really address these things. And sometimes what people see, and I'll say the untrained eye, somebody who perhaps is not a therapist or used to experiencing these things, creates a lot of fear and anxiety when they see things. They see people acting out in certain kinds of ways. And I think sometimes we even define that in a very extreme manner. We expect to see them on, one end of the spectrum where they're acting out ways that might be destructive to themselves or someone else. But the majority of people don't have life-threatening mental illnesses. They have challenges in their lives that creates difficulty navigating through certain types of things, whether that's relationships, jobs, families, et cetera, work, being in the community. And so there's a lot of room in this space to really provide some understanding about the issues that people face. You said something earlier. I want to circle back to that because I think it's so important. You talked about the family, because when a person is experiencing something, it's not just the person. There's an impact on the people around them. And of course, the most likely impact begins with family. Of course, it may go out to community and work and other kinds of places where people might be. But talk a little bit about families and the issues that you think are a part of this whole dynamic of confronting mental health challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially if the family has young children in the mix, there's a whole different element to it, because they, I think, in many ways are more aware of what is going on than you think they might be. And it can affect them. A lot of the interviews that I saw with families that were going through situations similar to what's depicted in Chest Candy, these kids had to grow up really fast. And they had to, in some cases, become the men and women of the house because their mom or dad was just in a different space. And I saw one documentary where the child who had to become a man ultimately considered taking his own life because it was just too much on him. On top of that, his father, who served, also contemplated taking his life. And so it's just, I think the family dynamics are really complex, and family does not always know how to best handle the situation. And that's one of the things that I talk to a lot of my consultants about and subtly explored some of these things in the film. By no means is Chest Candy a monolithic experience. My expectation is that even though my film depicts a person who has seen combat, there's a lot of people who have served who have mental health challenges as well, that and PTSD from other aspects of having served. And that's no less important. And so I think, you have the spouses, the girlfriends, the boyfriends that are really having to pick up the slack as best they can and try to survive whatever is happening. And it's a lot. It's a lot. I have family members that are to this day going through PTSD, and they have families, and it can be a struggle. So I really wanted to shed some light on that, and I hope that it, provokes conversations with people.
Yeah, absolutely. Robert, it's interesting that, again, even before I became a professional mental health counselor, I was a young kid growing up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan in public housing, moving about the community in various ways, getting my formal education, living with my family, going to church from time, pretty consistently actually, but engaged in activities in the community. And suicide was not a part of the lexicon of our lives. I mean, we just never really thought about it. We heard that people did commit suicide, and it was tragic when they did. But I remember distinctly thinking at some point in my early life that that's just not something I hear a lot of Black people doing. But yet we've seen some very alarming numbers over the last few years, especially among young children, young teenagers who are taking their lives. And I think one of the most tragic things that I see is, whether it's the result of bullying or feeling marginalized or being depressed in some form or fashion, and a young person who thinks that at that moment there's nowhere else to go except to take their life, is one of the most tragic things that I've seen happen. Absolutely. And I know that you too have probably seen that and felt that, that whatever the situation and circumstances might be in a person's life, these are challenges that people are facing that are not easy to navigate. And it puts an extreme burden on my mind and my heart when I see young people exposed to the choice of committing suicide.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have had young people or people that are now reflecting back on their youth that have confided in me uh, times that they have thought about it or even attempted. And I'm often surprised by some of the folks that share this information with me because you would never know. And that's the thing about it. You don't know what people are going through. We always talk about this. Like someone could smile all the day long and they are really smiling through those tears as best they can because either they're trying to, put on a show for other people. They don't want to burden other people, or they're really trying to fake it until they hopefully make it. But it's really stunning and just a sobering reality that people are contemplating ending it all. It's tough. It's really tough, and it weighs on you. And I just want to say, with respect to the soldier element of PTSD and the storyline of Chest Candy and all that I think there are so many ways that a person's PTSD or mental health challenges can manifest themselves. It's not always someone that is trying to take their life or someone that is aggressive. I mean, sometimes it's someone just totally going inside a turtle shell and closing off. Other times it's manifested very physically. And so there's all sorts of ways and that can make it harder, I think, for families and loved ones and just the perfect stranger to even be able to recognize the signs and then decide, well, now that I see the signs, what do I do with that? How can I help them? Do I push? Do I lightly tap? Because there's a fine line with all of that that I discovered even more in talking to a lot of the Army and Navy vets that are consultants on this project.
Yeah. What do you want to see this film do as a consequence of being able to release it, put it into people's hands, let them be able to take a look at it? What do you measure as success beyond the point of getting the film made?
Yeah, a lot of filmmakers, they chase the awards, and I have had many projects that have won awards at film festivals, and that's fantastic. But that's not the goal here. My expectation, again, is provoking that conversation and hopefully stimulating a connection between service people and veterans and people that have never walked in those shoes. Because having never served, I can never completely understand what a service person's mindset is and the things that they have endured and how a certain smell or sound or whatever the sense is can be triggered. I'll never be able to fully get that. And so I hope that this film helps people just think differently and not be so judgmental, whether it's the person that they see on the street, that the unhoused person that was a veteran, is a veteran, that it's not just let me walk on by or let me, make fun of them or let me assume that they're an alcoholic or a drug addict or they don't care or blah, 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 because that's just simply not always the case. In fact, more times than not, it's not the case. And so I hope that that's what it does. And then I also hope that it kind of makes a bridge between people that have served or are currently serving with being able to communicate in a way that is stronger and more productive with people that have not necessarily been a part of that kind of a life. Because when you're serving and then you come back to being a civilian, it's a completely different lifestyle. And I don't think people realize that as strongly as they should.
Yeah, and it's interesting too when you carry that forward from going back even into previous wars where veterans have returned, black veterans, and then found discrimination as a consequence of returning because the world that they came back to, even though they went off and fought for their nation, they came back and were, discriminated against and marginalized and mistreated, and sometimes in some cases even lynched as a consequence of their race. And so this is, of course, important stuff. What's next for this project?
So, as I said, we will be editing it heavily in August. There's some soft editing being done right now, and there'll be some previews and behind the scenes videos and eventually a trailer that will be released. I'm sort of a busy guy right now. I'll be teaching film camps this summer, so I can't move into post-production as quickly as I'd like, because when I get started, I don't want to stop. I'm like a monster with it. So once August comes around, I'll be able to go full force into post-production, and then the expectation is that we will do the festival route, and eventually it'll live somewhere on the internet, whether it's YouTube or something like that, where people can see it. Although in a perfect world, it would be great to get some sort of a distribution deal so that it's on a television network or on a streaming platform. That would be absolutely fantastic, just for greater reach. I hope that also that we're able to take this film into schools and maybe churches and different veteran groups. There will be a warning label in the film. It could be tough for some people to watch, and so it is important for me and my team to make it clear that, hey, if you're not okay with this, that's okay. But I've tried to, and will continue to try to, make this project as real as it can be, but without becoming exploitative, because that serves no purpose.
Yeah, well, it sounds wonderful. And if people want to learn more about it, they may want to chat with you a little bit about it, and perhaps ways to move this project forward in a way that could be very meaningful to other people. How would they reach out to you, and how would they connect with you?
You can connect with me by visiting my website, robertxgolphin.com. That's GOLPHIN, robertxgolphin.com. The site is active, but there will be a revised website in the next several weeks, and there will be a section dedicated specifically to Chess Candy's production. I'm also on social media, on Facebook, Robert X. Golphin, on Instagram, Robert X. Golphin Entertainment, and you can Google me as well. I would love to connect with anyone who may be interested in learning more about the film, supporting the film, and helping get the film out there to the masses, because that's what it's all about.
Well, I love your inclusivity as it relates to this project, and it has certainly been a wonderful experience to be a small part of the journey. I look forward to seeing you at the finish line. And
thank you, sir. But not a small part. You're a big part. You're a big part. I know you're being humble, but no, I am indebted to you and everybody else who has played any kind of role in making this project happen. So it's a precarious time for artists out here post industry strikes of last year. And so, we're just trying to make, I think, the best art that we can. And if the art can actually affect some change, then that's a beautiful thing. And that's what I always try to do.
Well, the film is Chess Candy, and you've been talking for the last 20 minutes or so with the actor, director, writer. He's a journalist. I mean, he's just an amazing brother. He does so much, and we're so honored to have him here today. He's, of course, best known until now for being the character of Dunbar Reed in The Great Debaters. But man, you've got quite a legacy that you're establishing, and for all the right reasons, and we certainly appreciate that, Robert. Thank you for joining us once again today. And, of course, I look forward to future conversations.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Always, always an honor.
All right, brother. Take care, man.
You too. Blessings.
Love you too, man.
All right.
Great way to start our broadcast today. Robert X. Golphin, he is an actor, writer, director, author, speaker, journalist. He hails from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, one of my favorite places in the whole wide world. And he is the director of a brand new film called Chess Candy that focuses on mental health and wellness. I'm going to come back in just a moment with my next guest, and we're going to do that in a pretty quick turnaround. So hold tight for just a moment. I'm Kenny Anderson. It's Second Chance. I hope that you're having an amazing afternoon.
Transforming lives.
Transforming lives.
You're listening to Second Chance with Kenneth Anderson.
Welcome back to the broadcast, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. It again is June the 23rd, 2024. We're clipping through this new year that was obliterated by moving into half the year already being taken care of. And folks, I promise you, before long, you're going to start seeing Christmas decorations, talking about Thanksgiving, because the cycle of life just keeps pushing forward, and we keep pushing forward as well. My next guest is Dr. Yohuru Williams. He's one of my favorite guests, and he's only been coming on the broadcast for the past year, but I try to squeeze him in as often as I possibly can. Let me tell you a little bit about who I'm talking to this afternoon. Dr. Williams is Distinguished University Chair and Professor of History and Founding Director of the Racial Justice Initiative at the University of St. Thomas. He did receive his PhD from Howard University a long time ago now, I guess. And he is the author of many books, including my absolute favorite. I'm going to remind you about this. My absolute favorite, Call Him Jack, the story of Jackie Robinson. And, every year, I'm going to start right there because I want to talk Jackie Robinson for a minute. Every year, Major League Baseball, which is my absolute favorite sport. I'm a big New York Yankees fan, born and raised in New York. And we're doing pretty well this year, so I'm going to celebrate while I can. Every year, Major League Baseball recognizes the contributions that Jackie Robinson has made. Jackie's widow is now 102, 103, beautiful as ever. I mean, I think she's been blessed with long life for lots of different reasons. But what an amazing man whose life, I believe, was cut short by the circumstances that he was placed under. Would you just reflect on the life and legacy of Jackie Robinson for a moment?
Absolutely, Kenny. First, great to be with you again. And I love that you started with Rachel, because I think the kind of living embodiment of Jack's legacy today, we can see in Rachel in the way that she's prioritized challenging disparities in education, which were very important to Jack and also a big part of her life. I had the good fortune for several years to work at the Jackie Robinson Foundation in New York City and work with Rachel. And she was in her 90s then, and sharp as the tack, somebody you didn't want to cross. And I mean that in a good way, because the work was so important to her. So, her attention to detail, every aspect of the Jackie Robinson Foundation, when we provided scholarships to students of color, Black students in particular, who were unable to meet the financial gap, which is the reason that Jack was forced to drop out of UCLA in his senior year. He just couldn't financially afford it. So four-letter athlete, someone who'd been incredibly successful, and yet this was an impediment for him. And yet, at the same time, Kenny, you talk about this as an important. We think about Jack's untimely passing. A lot of people attribute that to the stresses associated with what he faced on the baseball field and in society as a whole, carrying the burden of the race, so to speak, on his shoulders in terms of the integration of baseball. But at the same time, Jack's story is the story of the social determinants of health in our community: diabetes, untreated heart disease. These are challenges that in the Black community in particular, we continue to struggle with. I just did a report for with the 400 Years Commission on African American History, the minority majority, that talks about how the social determinants of health, particularly in the Black community, prostate cancer, heart disease, premature death, death in childbirth, so on and so forth, are all part and parcel of this legacy of inequality that we associate going back to slavery, but that's continued in our contemporary moment. And Jack's story is that story as well. Rachel's longevity, in some sense, you said it this way, Kenny, I'm going to underscore it in this way, might be attributed to the fact that there's a higher power that has a calling for her to make the case that the work that she's doing around these issues is important. But more importantly, it's the contrast between her longevity, her background in nursing, and the way that she was able to take care of herself, and Jack, by contrast, who didn't have access to or the opportunity to fulfill that in the way that we would assume most Americans do. And we think about the controversy over something like Obamacare. The nation's first African-American president prioritizes healthcare in that way. Why? We know that problem intimately in our community.
Wow, that's such a amazing perspective and context, I think, because as we celebrate people and as we think about them and reflect on their legacy, there's so many points, touch points that we can really bridge the knowledge gap, the understanding gap, the awareness gap by just understanding and recognizing this sort of a continuum between that person's life, their experiences, and then where we are today, some of the challenges that we face. This was an anniversary year, and 1964 was a very big year. Dr. Williams, I'll tell you this, one of us remembers that year quite well just because one of us happens to be a little bit older than the other one. But that aside, you are an absolute historian and a person who is interested in these kinds of things. And I wanted to talk to you about a couple of things. It is 2024, and in 1964, Mississippi was burning. And as a consequence of that, we're celebrating, in some ways, celebrate's probably not the word, but we're acknowledging the anniversary of the death of 3 civil rights workers in 1964. It is so hard to think that that's 80 years ago now. And yet, we're still fighting the fight for voting rights. We're still fighting the right for civil rights. Can you reflect on the context of this point of acknowledgement, looking at how in our lifetime, when we think about modern civil rights and experiences that Black people have had in America, that we've moved from that event that was pivotal in bringing about reformation in the laws of that time to where we are today, where we're finding regression in that process.
It's such an important point, Kenny. And Michael Long and I published a book this year, More Than a Dream, which is on the March on Washington from 1963, the anniversary of the March on Washington, but leading into that long build up to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And sometimes Americans forget just how contentious that period was. There's no guarantee that legislation was going to get through. In fact, one could argue that if not for the death of President Kennedy and the tragic assassination in Dallas, Texas, that the reality is that Lyndon Johnson had the bully pulpit of a dead president to be able to push that through Congress, despite the longest filibuster in American history to prevent the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We also often think about the kind of culmination of that taking place actually before the passage of the law itself. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech in August of 1963, but we forget that the filibuster also occasioned Malcolm X's Ballot of the Bullet, in which Malcolm is making the case that African Americans need to organize politically and to ensure that, and he's making the case, I think, very clearly in that moment, that even if that legislation was passed, it would require more of the Black community to ensure that their rights were respected as Americans. And Malcolm's arguments have certainly borne fruit in what we see today. We saw in 2013, Justice Trayvon Martin case was weaving its way through the judicial system in Florida. The Supreme Court gut key sections of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 in Shelby County versus Holder. We had Congressman John Lewis, whom we lost in 2020, but who was certainly alive in 2013, speaking out against the Roberts Court and saying in that moment, don't undo what President Johnson did when he signed that law into that bill into law. They're speaking specifically about the Voting Rights Act of 1965, but the reality is the Civil Rights Act of 1964 also had provisions to protect the Black vote. They just weren't enough. Like the story of Black folks in America has always been incremental change tempered by these kind of incomplete or unfinished revolutions, unfinished business. So you get a 13th Amendment, 1865. Why do you then need a 14th Amendment in 1868 and a 15th Amendment in 1870 and a Force Act of 1870 and a Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871 and a Civil Rights Act of 1866 and a Civil Rights Act you need all that because at every step, African Americans encounter, Black folks encounter obstacles, their efforts to roll back, to push back, the backlash, so to speak. And we're seeing that in our contemporary moment. You have this racial reckoning that came as a result of the murder of George Floyd here in Minneapolis in 2020. And yet that was taking place at the same time. There was this national debate over Confederate statues, this national debate over symbols of hatred that we saw manifest in things like the shooting in Charleston, South Carolina, the Confederate flag flying proudly over the State House, and this idea that America still has this unresolved tension over white supremacy and what the nature of this democracy is, and if Black people can claim themselves as a birthright, birthright citizenship, but also what are the practical implications of that when there's so many impediments that are put in place to the exercise of the full and free enjoyment of those civil rights. And the most fundamental of those is the right to vote. So it's a really important anniversary year. And it's an anniversary year that we should reflect on because in a way, what we're witnessing again is this idea that history doesn't repeat itself, it echoes. And those echoes often ping off the unfinished business. Why is it that a half century later, we go back and look at those signs? I challenge your listeners, your viewers, Google tonight images of the March on Washington, 1963. What do those placards say? In housing discrimination, in police brutality. So it's not that we're talking about new issues. We're talking about the echoes of the inability to deal substantively with those issues. And I think the pushback against diversity, equity, and inclusion in our moment, efforts to sanitize our history in our moment, are a manifestation of what Langston Hughes, Nina Simone turned it into a song called Mr. Backlash, the Backlash Blues. Whenever African Americans, Black folks seem to be taking a step forward, the society as a whole steps in and says, this is too much. And that pushback is what manifests in the violence that we associate with the murders of Schwerner, Cheney, and Goodman in 1964, Freedom Summer, and January 6th.
Yeah, listen, all of that is so powerful and so interestingly placed in the context of where we are today politically. And as you shared those anecdotes of how we have the challenge of, number one, reminding ourselves, but also paying attention to those echoes. I love the way you characterize that. I think that's so critical and important. So I've got to ask you this question, Doc. We've got a big election taking place this year, and I personally believe every election is a big election, but that's another conversation. We've got a really big election this year. Time Magazine had an article out just 2 weeks ago, and the headline said, "If he wins," and it had a picture of Trump on the front. And it was just kind of going in, talking about what the Trump playbook might look like if he wins and what he has already not just suggested, but has said. How do you view where this whole process is right now? And how do you explain Black support for Trump?
Wow. This is a phenomenal question, and I think one that forces us to deal with kind of two problems here. Number one is the phenomena of Donald Trump that's simply a reflection of our contemporary moment in terms of this white backlash, what we saw develop in the Obama years with the Tea Party, and this reaching its kind of illogical, logical conclusion in this faux populism that postulates that there is a deep state, the great replacement theory, all of this foolishness that really is predicated on this idea of maintaining America as it was, this mythological America that'll be familiar to some in the cartoonish lyrics of Norman Lear and All in the Family from 1970. Boy, the way Glenn Miller played songs that made the hit parade, guys like us, we had it made. White folks, white Americans, Archie Bunker. The brilliance of Norman Lear, and I said this back in December when he passed, was that he situated America's most lovable racists, not in Birmingham, Alabama, not in Tallahassee, Florida. He put him in Queens, New York. And he was trying to say, this is a national problem. And in our contemporary moment, it's finally catching up in ways that we see that we're not just talking about Birmingham. We're talking about Michigan. We're talking about Florida. We're talking about Pennsylvania. We're talking about Ohio. Maybe Florida would be expected because it's one of those holdouts from Reconstruction to Florida, Louisiana, South Carolina. So, for a historian, as I look at this contemporary moment, there's also this nostalgia in the African-American community for an idealized portrait of segregated America that is problematic because it postulates that we were together then. And because we were together, we pursued a more conservative agenda. And you hear certain lawmakers making this case kind of foolishly, cartoonishly so, that African-American community has always been conservative, that our values align more closely with that of the Republican Party, with the Donald Trump. There's a history to that these folks are not engaging, that goes deeper than the superficial analysis that they offer. Part of that, number one, is that the Republican Party, at least in that moment, because the Republican Party of today is not the Republican Party of 1912 or 1865, or even 1960 for that matter. But this is the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln, the party that, emancipated Black folks, 4.5 million slaves, and ushered in freedom. But by the 1930s, you've got African Americans increasingly turning toward the Democratic Party. Famously, there's this idea that turn your pictures of Lincoln to the wall under FDR because the New Deal addressed issues of poverty and inequality. And that led to, because of Truman's embrace of civil rights, this bolting of the Democratic Party by the Dixiecrats, which is the foundation of the modern Republican Party as we know it. So not knowing that history allows some people to then, in this idealized longing for this portrait of Black America that resembles what people associate with something like a Black Wall Street, Tulsa, right? There were thriving Black businesses. There were Black teachers in school. There was an agenda that, God-fearing Americans, Black Americans could support, gets conflated with this idea that today, that's what we need. And if we could get back to that, and Donald Trump can deliver that, essentially by doubling down on what would be a segregated America. I have a real problem with that. And I think this nostalgia for that is problematic. And sometimes it comes out of people who are well-meaning in the way that they frame it, but the damage is there nonetheless.
I can't let you get away without reflecting on the passing of Reverend James Lawson, of course, civil rights pioneer, one of the names that is not always elevated among the common general population, but certainly those that know that this man was a giant in the process. Your reflections on his legacy?
He was a supreme tactician. And again, we sometimes think about the civil rights movement in terms of the speeches that charismatic leaders made. We don't think about the practical theory, right? The strategy that went into those campaigns, thinking, like playing chess with literally with people's lives, but with the calculus that if they were successful, ultimately, it would be enough to transform the nation in the process. Lawson belongs to that class. We've lost some giants in the last 5 years. We'll continue to lose, these very important, inspirational people associated with the movement. What I hope people don't lose sight of is that it's not just the charismatic, it's the Bayard Rustins, it's the Lawsons, it's the Ella Bakers, it's the Fannie Lou Hamers, who we also should elevate because they were thinkers and strategists as well as activists. In fact, thinking and strategy were integral to their activism.
Yeah, it's, I think, an important footnote, if I wanted to characterize it that way, with everything going on around us, that we don't lose sight of these kinds of transitions. And like you said, if you just do the math, you know that so many of these pioneers that are still with us are eventually going to transition. And the lesson in all of that has to be, what have we learned from their work and what is there still to do as a consequence of that? Let that inspire us in some very, very positive ways. You know, I don't watch a whole lot of TV, but when I turn the TV on and I see a program called Erased, WW2's Heroes of Color, and I see Dr. Yohuru Williams being prominently featured in the commentary. You know, I got to ask him about it when he comes on the Second Chance radio broadcast. I got to tell you, man, I was not just, I knew what you brought to the table anyway, but I was really impressed with this documentary. And I wanted to ask you your thoughts about just how would you rate this work? Because it seemed like it was a very well done job. National Geographic Channel. I got locked and loaded. I couldn't turn away. I probably spent half a day watching it, and it was absolutely amazing. So talk about that project.
Kenny, I have to tell you, my wife said before I came on, she said, I guarantee you Kenny's going to ask you about it. She knew you thought. She said that, literally. So now I'm out of dinner because of you, Kenny. I'm going to have to say that.
It's my fault.
Thank you for that. No, I kind of figured, and she's right. I think so many of us are hungry for that history. I know how important it is to you. And when it was Idris Elba's production company that reached out and said they were working on this, and you know they're located in England, based in England. So when I got the inquiry, you know, I was already at yes, but I was even more intrigued because what Idris wanted to do in particular is to tell the story of multiple communities of color that were erased. But to foreground Black Americans is kind of the, you know, if you really want to understand what this process was like and where the U.S. government, where the Allies learned about how to discriminate and erase, it was with the U.S., right? We are pioneers in what it means to be a segregated society. We brought that with us to Europe. And often, you know, particularly in the stories of the Navy in particular, and that's what I loved about it, is we hear a lot about the Tuskegee Airmen. We hear a lot about the Black Panther unit. Rarely do we hear about, you know, Dory Miller and the Navy, and he wanted to layer all of that in. So it was incredible to be a part of that. We shot it back in November, and I just remember thinking to myself, I'm glad they told the story in the way they did, because often with communities of color, and now I'm being broad very specifically, they often say this is only about Black people. And I have to remind people all the time, look at those segregation signs, say colored. They don't say Black. And there are a whole bunch of people who don't see themselves as being part of that colored until they're confronted with that history in a way that they can't escape it. This documentary did a phenomenal job of saying, if you don't appreciate the African-American experience, when you see the ways in which it affected these other communities, then you certainly should appreciate that African-Americans had no retreat, no quarter from this whatsoever. And oh, by the way, they weren't the only ones erased, but their story in particular makes the case for why we should be working toward a society where this is not the standard. So I loved it for that reason. I thought they did a phenomenal job, and I was an honor to participate in that.
Yeah, wow. It was just phenomenal, especially around the acknowledgement of D-Day. And I was just, you know, writing all kind of little notes here. And one of the notes that I wrote was that, and I didn't know, I mean, I learned some stuff, 621 Black soldiers of the 320th landed on Omaha Beach on June the 6th, 1944. I never knew that. And I thought, yeah, this is, and then I thought back to the title Erased, WW2's Heroes of Color. What a phenomenal product.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Kenny, they don't, here's the thing that's interesting. I knew that as a historian. I've never seen anyone acknowledge that in movies, in film, and television. We can talk about the blockbuster films that have dealt with the invasion of Omaha Beach. Never were we represented. And 621 is a significant number. And so it was gratifying for me in so many ways. I'd done a project with Morgan Freeman's production company last year on the Black Panthers. And Morgan Freeman kind of talked about his relationship. Of course, Jackie Robinson was a member of the Panthers, but didn't go over because he had gone through that court-martial or near court-martial for refusing to give up his seat on a segregated bus in Texas. So, you know, that story is more familiar to folks. But for, I think, our community in particular, for Black people in particular to learn, we were there. And there's a point in this that I want to make, and I'm going to say it very slowly because I want people to drink it in. We're always there. We're always there. Sometimes you got to dig to find us, but the reality is, if there's a there, we're there. From the American Revolution, people talk about Crispus Attucks. down to World War II and the invasion of Omaha Beach. And then in our contemporary moment, as we think about, everybody talks about social justice movements, but the reality is, in America's foreign wars, in America's domestic policies, in technology, this is why we have a Black History Month. This is what Carter Woodson meant to elevate. We're always there. You just got to adjust your gaze and look for us, because there are always efforts to negate, to erase, to deny our contributions.
Yeah. Wow. Listen, I'm looking up and I'm seeing I got about 2.5 minutes left. I'm going to get this all in that short period of time. But you got any book projects that you're working on right now that you can talk about?
I do. Jonathan I just won the Pulitzer for his biography of Dr. Martin Luther King. Michael Long and I joined up on that to produce a children's version of that book. So that'll be out in January. We're really excited about that. I have a new book out on a contribution to a new book out, Manish Water, which comes out in 2 weeks. It's a collection of essays by Black men in the academy, looking at the experience of Black men in particular in this moment in our history, and how we have historically navigated the challenges and what we need to do to prepare for the upcoming century. So that's exciting. Michael Long and I just published a children's book on the Silent March of 1919 and James Weldon Johnson, which is exciting. And I'm still working, one day, Kenny, when this book comes out, I'm going to come and be in studio with you, but I'm still kind of working on my lynching book eventually, In the Shadow of the Whipping Post, Lynching and Capital Punishment in Delaware. I keep saying, every time I see you, I tell you, so I'm working on it. It's coming. It's coming.
I know it is, and I have so much respect for you and your work. Of course, your knowledge, your intellect, your insight, and all the ways in which you approach this particular platform. You just elevate our game here at Second Chance and WJOU, and I certainly appreciate you. He's Dr. Yohuru Williams. He is Distinguished University Chair and Professor of History and the founding director of the Racial Justice Initiative at the University of St. Thomas. You can see, folks, why I don't press upon him too often to come on the show. I just kind of rope him in every now and then. In fact, sometimes I just throw the reel out, and if I catch the big fish, I catch the big fish. So I'm always honored whenever you have a chance to come on. Dr. Williams, tell people how they can connect with you, either through a website, social media presence, or whatever you've got going on out there.
So I'm very easy to find on the web at the university. My email. I'm on X, although I'm not on it as much. I'm on X, and then Instagram and Facebook. So you can reach out that way. I have to say, Kenny, I love you. You are always impeccably dressed. You always feed my intellect. But I'm a little salty with you right now because my wife is going to make sure this is a very expensive dinner. Well, I love you, brother. Appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
Love you too, in our regards to her. That's Dr. Yohuru Williams, folks. One of the best, one of the absolute best. That's all I'm going to say. And we'll maybe hear a little bit of the footnote to this story about what I might bring up on the show, which I did bring up on the show, that he is now going to be accountable for to his wife. That was a lot of fun. I appreciate that. And I tell you, folks, it just gets better and better. I am so excited about my next guest, who's going to really set the table for us this afternoon. And she's none other than Donna Green-Goodman. She's going to come on in just a moment. Oh, well, she's here now. I just want to do one thing, Donna. I got to take a little bit of transition. I think my cue went off a little bit fast there, but it's okay. I'm going to do a little bit of a transition. You don't have to go anywhere. Stay right where you are, and then we're going to phase you back in. But I want to let people know who we are, what we're doing, and why we're doing it. And then we're going to come back and talk to an extraordinary nutritionist, mother, wife, community activist, educator, and so much more. Did I say mother? So much more. And she's a friend. She's actually my sister.
Yes.
So I can't wait. I'll be back in just a moment. I hope you stay right there, folks. Don't go anywhere. There's no reason to go anywhere because I got Donna Green-Goodman. Let's see, right there. Let me get right direction. There we go. Right there. There's Donna Green-Goodman. I'm saying right there too, folks, because if you're not on the live stream at this time, YouTube, Facebook, Second Chance on Praise 90.1 FM. That's what you're looking for. Praise 90.1 FM. you got to do it right now. We're going to come back in just a moment. It's Second Chance. I'm Kenny Anderson. Hope you're having a great day. Don't go anywhere now.
Why do we say praise 90.1 FM? Because the blessing is in the praise. Filling your day with songs of praise on Praise 90.1 FM.
Transforming lives.
Transforming lives.
You're listening to Second Chance with Kenneth Anderson.
Welcome back to the Second Chance radio broadcast, folks. We are chugging right through the month of June. It's almost over. Summer just started a couple of days ago. Even though, as I said early in the broadcast, it feels like it's been around for a couple of weeks with all the heat that we've had. But I hope that you're staying safe, dry, and cool this afternoon in a comfortable place. And we thank you for joining us for the Second Chance radio broadcast. My next guest, as I said, is my sister and friend for a long time now, and I'm the better person for it. Donna Green-Goodman is a career public health educator. She graduated from the great Oakwood University in home economics, nutrition, and earned a master's in public health from Loma Linda University in Loma Linda, California. No shade, but I didn't say great. We love them. We love them too, Don. We love them, and those that go there, we love them. She served as a national ambassador for Susan G. Komen's Circle of Promise campaign. She's been a food life instructor, Cancer Project, PCRM, and is on the advisory board for the Let's Beat Breast Cancer PCRM initiative. You might ask, why all of that? Because she is a 25-plus year breast cancer survivor. She discovered the value and the power of plant foods in preventing and reversing diabetes. She's authored 3 books on healthy living. She's had a TV show. She works in business with her husband, Eddie, my brother, a physical therapist at Lifestyle Therapeutics right here in Huntsville, Alabama. But their mission is for the world, and I'm always delighted and thrilled to have her in the kitchen working on some beautiful things as always. Sometimes she's in the kitchen at Oakwood University. Sometimes she's in the kitchen at home. Sometimes she's just somewhere where there's a place to make food good, a catering environment. And she's just the best when it comes to prepping food. And Donna Green-Goodman, welcome back to my broadcast.
Kenny, it's always a joy to join you, my brother. I'm so glad to be here today.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of names people can throw around with extraordinary nutritionists and cooks and caterers, but Donna Green-Goodman's right up there at the top for me. You just don't know how many times I've seen your praises, and people are asking me about vegan lifestyle or vegetarian lifestyle. If I'm turning things down at different events, and they ask me, well, how long have you done this? Or where are you in the process and such and such? Well, can you find food that really tastes good? Oh, yeah, Donna Green-Goodman. I say it a lot.
I never realized, from my own perspective, the impact of the food that I cook, because I just like to do it. But I remember a friend of ours, Eddie Polite, said to me some time ago, probably when we were at Oakwood, that I was one of the first young people he met who cooked like an old woman. I'm like, okay, I don't know exactly what that means, but okay, I'll receive it. The flavor is the secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I'm going to give you a little what came first, the chicken or the egg, even though I know your story. Did you really double down on the cooking when you discovered the cancer? Or was it really before that? Because you come from a legacy of people that can throw down.
Yeah. I started learning how to cook when I was probably about 10 years old. And my dad and mom were doing some work during the summer with young people. And my mom realized that I was happiest in the kitchen. So she took me in there with her. and I began to cook. But after I left Oakwood and Home Ec Nutrition, I began to work as back then it was a home economist. Now it's a family consumer scientist. And the whole crux of what we did was to help people in communities learn how to improve themselves through home economic kind of stuff. But cooking was the main thing. And so I would do cooking classes in the community. I would do them at my church. I taught people how to can and freeze. And so when the breast cancer diagnosis came, I already had a following of sorts who were very interested in the food that I prepared and learning how to make it themselves. And so then like you just said, you're out in places and they're asking you, okay, Kenny, I didn't know you made those changes. And so people are starting to ask me, well, Donna, you're not going to do this. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. Well, how do you make so-and-so? Or what's the best way to do such and such? And that's how I kind of started transitioning. And one of the most popular things that I used to do was a pound cake. I would make pound cake on Friday for my new husband. And he would buy a gallon of milk. And by Sunday night, the cake was gone. 25 years old, just married. And he would just slice the cake and eat it and drink, big cups of milk. And so pound cake was something that I had developed a pretty good reputation for. And I started with that as one of the things that I transitioned into making a healthier version of. Wow.
Well, there is no healthier cake, cupcake. And I'm trying to think of the different kinds of things I've had in terms of the dessert realm. There's no healthier one than what Donna Green-Goodman makes. And she literally comes to health equity conferences and just woos the whole table of strangers who are visiting Huntsville for this conference with cake. And everybody eats cake. Yeah. And it's like, everybody's sitting there going, oh my goodness. And they say, I heard about the cake and the recipe for the cake and all of these kinds of things going on. It is summertime, as I said before, and I'm always of the mindset that we do things differently at different times of year, perhaps. And I wonder if there's a summertime healthy living, healthy lifestyle, healthy eating mindset, just like a lot of people transition from fall clothing to winter clothing and that kind of thing. Do we think of, or should we think about nutrition that way? There's certain things that perhaps come to mind in terms of being more available at this time that we really need to take advantage of. Talk to me a little bit about those kinds of things.
Okay, so I actually was writing an article this morning about harvest time and how most of us in the South are really tuned in this time of year because of our gardens. You know where we live, and Eddie does a garden every year, and we have already begun picking from it. We had family over a week or so ago, and they were up there with us, and we had collards and broccoli and cabbage and turnips and kale. There's squash up there. There are tomatoes and peppers. Outside of the garden, there's some blueberries. Eddie has started growing grapes. Ooh. And so my family was really excited because they knew we had grown it and they were excited about it. But the question that you pose, those are the things that we look for in the summertime. And oftentimes the foods that come from the garden and that we prefer to eat in the summertime are lighter in weight, and they are heavier in water. So things like melons and strawberries and peaches and berries, all of those have a higher water content than some of the other foods. And because it's so doggone hot, the last thing that you want to do is really eat a heavy meal. Now, I know for people who in our culture who perhaps have celebrated Juneteenth, have big family reunions, there are some dishes that are part of the culture that you're going to want to have. Mac and cheese is a big one. You know, somebody's oven is going to turn that up. For the most part, we're looking for things that are lighter. And so we do a lot more salads, whether they are green salads with all the vegetables and stuff from the garden. We do more pasta kinds of salads that often have a lot of vegetables in them. We do a lot of fruit salads. Eddie, we have found seeded watermelon already at the farmer's market. So we've been buying big seeded ones. And he was talking to me today, talking about, I'm sorry, I'm tasting this watermelon and it's just so good. And literally, when it comes to plant foods, the percentage of water that's in them is very similar to the percentage of water that's in our bodies. So you can take watermelon, cantaloupe, honeydew, strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, mix all that together. And you not only get satisfied, but your body fills up, but you're also getting a lot of liquid, which helps you navigate all the heat. Because the other kinds of foods that we normally eat during the winter, fall part of the season, they're a little heavier. Your squashes and pumpkins and sweet potatoes. And you want something that's going to keep you cool while you're outside in these temperatures. And the stuff that you eat in the summertime is great. From my perspective personally, and from a biblical perspective, eating food in season is probably the best thing to do, whatever time of year it is. But especially it's good because you literally, I was out there the other morning, I wanted to make some breakfast and I thought, I think I want some kale in this. So I went up to the garden and I got some kale and I added it to what I was cooking. And while I was out there, I saw the blueberries and I'm like, let me taste the blueberry. And several of them were almost ripe and I've got to wait for the rest of them to ripen. But you're thinking, okay, this stuff's in season. What is the benefit of it? If you buy it in season and eat it in season, the nutritive value is higher. Because I'm not sure how many of your listeners, viewers, or even you realize that in July, August, we can get mangoes and strawberries and all that. But in the middle of December, if you want to get some mangoes, they're grown in another country, more than likely, and shipped when they're green. And then they're sat inside of a place where they store them. And they continue to very, very slowly ripen. So you're paying more money for them. And the nutritive value is not as high because the process has been so long in getting it to you. And then when you put it in your car and it's warm in your car, it ripens right up and then it'll go to rot. So this time of year, you're getting fresh fruit out of the garden, off the tree, at the farmer's market, at Mid-City, in one of those places where the farmers gather. And the food is higher in nutrient value. It hasn't traveled as far and it's less expensive. And that contributes a whole lot more. And then a lot of folk don't want to heat up the kitchen this time of year. So they're grilling things and they grill them outdoor. And the main thing, of course, that they're grilling is animal products, meats and all of that. But for people who are eating a plant-based diet or are moving towards eating more of that, you can take your vegetables and fruits and grill them as well, or get meat substitutes and grill them as well. And Eddie's not always crazy about it. He's like, why you got to go outside? You can just do it in the house. And I'm thinking, because I don't want to heat the house up. But right outside, put everything in the grill, then you just bring the plate of food in and everything is ready. And I think, especially towards the evening or first thing in the morning, doing it then, it just keeps the house cooler and the food is fresher and it tastes better. And you just can't beat fresh corn on the cob off the grill this time of year. You can't do it.
I always make the mistake of this is kind of a paradox here. I make the mistake of inviting Donna on because she always lays out this incredible thing of information, this palette, I'll say, of information that just makes you want to eat. And it always, I mean, it just sounds delicious. And I know because of your track record, if you say it, it is. And if you make it, it is. I want to ask you this question, Donna, because I'm moving in this direction pretty rapidly. It'll probably happen sometime late this year or the first part of next year, but I'm moving into home gardening.
Oh,
for the first time ever.
Oh, Kitty.
I don't know where to start. Help a brother out. Tell me, where do I begin? What do I need to think about? What do I need to do?
Okay, so you're not going to start anything till next year?
Maybe later this year. It'll be after October.
Okay, so what you do, decide what you like to eat. And so the things that I mentioned a few minutes ago that are in our garden now are the things that we really like to eat.
Okay.
And for me, I also enjoy canning and freezing because I love to go in my kitchen in like October, November or maybe even January when we're snowed in, and open up a can of tomatoes that I canned earlier in the year. And literally, when you open up stuff that you have canned, it smells like summer. And the dish that you're putting it in is totally different than if you were to have bought some canned tomatoes from the store. So you decide on what you like to eat. And during the fall, the kinds of things that you want to plant are heartier foods like potatoes, broccoli, your cabbages and cauliflower, pumpkin, if that's something that you like. And we have planted some of the greens in the summertime. And fortunately for us, the last 2 years, it's been good in the summer, because usually when you plant them in the summer, they're tough. But when you plant them in the wintertime, the frost hits them and they are not as tough. So you want to first figure out, what do you enjoy eating? Because it doesn't make sense to plant it if you're going to be giving it to the neighbors. The second thing I would say is, where are you going to plant it? Wherever we have lived in our 40-year marriage, Eddie has always found a space to put something in the ground. And now we have one of the biggest gardens that we've ever had. So figure out where your space is. And if you have space like we have, that's fine. If you don't, you just have a little sunny spot at your home, use that. If you don't have a sunny spot, then find a sunny window where you can plant some things. And then there are people nowadays who are growing these internal gardens in their homes that are hydroponic gardens that grow from the ground up inside of these. They're not always glass, but glass or hard plastic that the food can grow in. So that's an option for you too. So you figured out what you want to eat, where you're going to put it, and then figure out the type of gardening that you're going to do. And we have tried everything. Eddie used to get the tiller and mow the lawn and all of that. And one day we were watching this video called Eden Gardening, and it has changed our whole perspective. And if you really want to be successful this time, I think this is a good idea. And if you decide to use this in the fall, and then in the summertime, spring, when you plant for the summer, it just changes the whole nature of the area that you're planting. So if you think about going to a park and walking through the wooded area of it, as you walk through the woods, if you were to move back some of the dirt and stuff, and dig down below, you see this really rich black soil. And the guy who promotes this Eden gardening is tying it into the Bible in the Garden of Eden. And it made me think, because where we live, we've got trees all over the place, and you can walk in the woods and nobody's out there taking care of it, tending to it. Right. So what happens is every season, as the leaves die and they go down into the ground, they literally come apart and fertilize the earth. And then the other trees that are there will yield some of the seed from themselves that drop down into that dirt. And that's how the stuff keeps growing. So the concept is to use this wonderful matter to put into your garden space and let it decompose. And Kenny, you and I have been in Alabama 50 years. And we know that this is Alabama red dirt. We watched our garden dirt go from red clay to black soil that was full of worms. So he puts newspaper on it first, and then he may put some cardboard on it, and that will just disintegrate into the dirt. And then he gets these wood chips that he puts on top of the wood, on top of that, and lets that just kind of sit and settle. And then he goes and plants the seed in there. And the beauty that we have found with this type of gardening is that you don't even have to water the garden, because the wood chips hold the rain and kind of release it into the soil. And the amount of water that's in your vegetables and fruits that you grow literally is so much that the pests don't want to eat as much of it. And the weeds don't grow as much, because I remember as a little girl, teenager, with my dad here in Huntsville growing stuff, and we watch it from the morning, and it would be maybe this big, and when we come home from school, it might be that big. So we watched it grow during the day. But the weeds you have to pull to get to the stuff. It's like, am I ever going to eat anything? So with this type of gardening, if there are any weeds, they're just a few, and you can just pull them out of the ground, and it's not a big deal. And then the food that comes from out of there, Kenny, you talk about me serving food, those long sheets that you find of food when you go to occasions at church or events that are the big long sheet pans that are full of whatever they're serving. We filled that with plum tomatoes from our garden.
Mm.
And it was just piled up high. Then Eddie comes down one day with a wheelbarrow full of sweet potatoes, some of which were as big as our foot. And that was just from planting the sweet potato slip in the ground. White potatoes, yellow potatoes, purple potatoes, whatever you like. And then once it's grown, you can eat it, of course, right away, or you can preserve it. And you can preserve it by canning, by freezing, by drying. And if you're going to can, usually the kind of food that you would do in the fall is a low acid food. So you would need to do that in a pressure canner. But if you're doing things that are high acid, like fruits and tomatoes and stuff like that, you can do that in a water bath canner. And during the fall, you probably wouldn't plant them because you couldn't grow them that fast enough. But if you get apples, fresh apples from the farms that are around here, and make your own apple sauce. And then one of the most beautiful things for us is to know that we go out to the garden and it's like, Eddie, did you plant these peppers? And he's like, no, I didn't plant those peppers. You end up with volunteer vegetables and fruits. But literally, I came home one day and there's a watermelon this big hanging over the edge of the thing. I'm like, Eddie, what is that? And then out on the driveway where his pile of wood chips was, tomato plants just grew up out of it. No dirt, just out of the wood, because the seeds were left there. And that's a beautiful, another thing is that we spend a lot of money going to the store, you know, and you probably will as you think about doing this process. But sometimes the very food that you eat that has seed in it, you can save that seed and use it to go into the ground.
Wow. Are smoothies kind of a year-round thing?
Yeah, you can eat them all the time. It's harder in the wintertime to do strawberries and stuff like that. Yeah. But in the wintertime, you can use winter fruit. One of my favorite smoothies I came up with after Thanksgiving dinner. My mom and I were going shopping the next morning, and I needed just a little something for energy. And I took what we had left over from Thanksgiving dinner, which was homemade cranberry sauce and some mandarin oranges and a fresh in-season apple. The ambrosia apple is my favorite, and some pineapple. And I put that in the blender and added some non-dairy eggnog, and blended that up, and it was absolutely delicious. Of course, in the wintertime, if you're growing greens, you can always make a green smoothie. So you have access to that. Cranberries, whatever is in season, you can use fresh, and or just go to the grocery store and they'll have bags of frozen fruit if that's the thing that you really want to eat something that's not in season. But yeah, smoothies year round. Yeah,
I'm glad to hear that. I have this another question for you, and I'm watching my time. I got about 6 minutes here.
Okay.
So talk just briefly and anecdotally perhaps about nutrition and lifestyle. A lot of people have prepared for this moment, meaning summertime and want that summer body. And if they haven't gotten it by now, it's too late. Just have to look ahead to next year. But how do we go about maintaining a good balance between all of these picnics and outdoor eating opportunities and social events during the summer and early fall? How do we maintain a good balance between those opportunities and lifestyle matters, exercise, etc.?
I think it's the same thing that I say when I'm asked about this during the Christmas holiday. Know where you're going. Make sure that you have options. If you're fully plant-based, you want to make sure of that. If you are kosher, you want to make sure that there's kosher options for you. If you have allergies, you want to make sure that there's nothing there. And if you are the host, you want to make sure that you have things that are not allergens to other people. Sometimes it's good to eat before you go because then you won't eat as much when you get there. Sometimes it's good to bring something with you when you come. The other thing that is really, really good to help you eat less is to drink plenty of water. And one of the easiest ways to do that, of course, in the morning is to fill up a container that has the water in it. And I believe I've seen you with one in the past where you're just making sure you drink your water. And for people who don't like the taste of plain water, summertime is a really good time to just take fresh fruit and float it in there so that the water becomes flavored by the fruit. The other thing that you could do is make teas. that are herb teas, ginger, peppermint, raspberry. I was looking earlier around Juneteenth time, and a lot of folk who are Caribbean drink sorrel. And that tea comes from hibiscus flowers, and there's a definite connection to it and the celebration of Juneteenth and the color of red and how much it meant to Black folk. And we've continued that tradition, except now it's a wine punch, which ain't so good for you. But when you're drinking teas like that, they literally are full of phytochemicals that can help keep your pressure down and keep you cool through the day and all that. Then you want to add exercise to it. Every time you eat, take a little walk. We've been telling our patients lately who are struggling with getting in, you know, the many steps that I've seen you get in. And so whenever you finish eating, because for some people it's monumental to think I'm going from doing nothing. Now you got me doing 10,000 steps a day. Okay. So whenever you finish eating your meal, just take a short walk. And the beauty of the walk now that I'm discovering is that it helps with digestion. It helps with blood sugar control. It helps with getting your pressure down. It keeps you from getting the itis because you're moving and the blood is circulating better. But there's some amazing information now that is being documented, especially among Asian populations, that speaks about something called nature bathing. And so being outside in the fresh air where the sun and the trees are, not necessarily walking, but if you walk, that's better. Your body has sensors in it that are trying to figure out, okay, she's out here under these trees. What does her body need? And they pull it in literally from outside. And they've discovered that when a person sits outside, just sits, Kenny, out there where nature is, like where we live, and they have taken measures of stress hormones before they sit outside, after they've been outside 30 minutes to an hour, and they measure again, the stress hormones levels have dropped precipitously. Wow. And they discover that the body gets rid of it in the urine. So being outside in the sun, getting the sunlight that you can get now. And as a Black or brown person, they used to tell you that you had to be out there longer because of the color in your skin. I say you get to be out there longer because of the color of your skin. And this time of year is the best time to get it. We've understood now that vitamin D is not actually a vitamin, but it's a hormone that has to do with every process in the body. And that is very helpful as well. Go to these gatherings, understanding that your people gonna be there. So it's gonna be some things that make you stressful. But you always have the power to say no. And you have the ability to determine how long you're gonna stay there. Because a lot of times, Kenny, people eat poorly, not because they don't know that it's not good for them, but because they get stressed out. So you go to the gathering, uncle, whoever is there, auntie, and you know y'all don't get along. So when you get in the car, you upset and you drive and you just gorge on some stuff. No, ma'am, we're not going to do that. We know they're there. So you set some boundaries. I'm only going to stay this long. I'm not going to have that conversation with them. If it gets hot, I'm out. And I'm going to make sure that I'm not going to be eating foods that are going to inflame my system already. I may need to go somewhere and do some deep breathing, and that's going to keep me calm as I move through this hot summer down here in Alabama.
That's right. Have the whole arsenal, the whole resource skill set available for you. Absolutely.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Donna, we're out of time, but tell people how they can connect with you, website, social media presence.
I am on Instagram, and I'm on what used to be Twitter, now called X, @StillShoutin'. My husband and I have a website, lifestyletherapeutics.com. You can follow me there. And if you are interested in learning how to put some of these things into practice, if you go to our YouTube channel, Lifestyle Therapeutics, there's a bunch of videos there where we're doing some demonstration of some of Kenny's favorite foods.
Hey, listen, folks, I absolutely recommend that you go to those pages. I have friends, personal friends, good, close personal friends, people that almost joined at the hip with me. Y'all know one of them, David Person. David and I have literally fought over Donna's food at times. Let me figuratively fought. Say, Donna made this for me. Well, Donna better make this for me. You know.
Yes. So we started doing meal prep as well, and that's at stillshoutin.com, where you can order a meal by Monday midnight, pick it up here in Huntsville on Thursday, and it's a joy when I see you and David show up, because y'all my boys, and when you my boys, I sometimes put a little something extra in. To help the journey.
Hey, look, you did the last time, and it was a hookup, and I appreciate that. We appreciate that. So
Yeah.
we'll be back. There's no question about it. Donna Green-Goodman, she's an extraordinary nutritionist. She's my go-to person for all things lifestyle and health. Shout out to her husband, Eddie, my brother. And so good to have my sister on the call this afternoon. Donna, I will see you soon.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to pack you up a goodie bag.
All right. See you soon.
All right, take care.
All right. Donna Green-Goodman joining us as she usually does on this platform, and we certainly appreciate that. And, it's been a really, really marvelous, fantastic, and terrific day. So we're just going to kind of keep the ball rolling. I'm going to introduce my next guest. I haven't done this, in fact. I don't think I've done this in probably, oh, my goodness, many, many years since I've just gone from guest to guest to guest without a transitional thing. My next guest is Kevin Fernandez, the founder of L2 Mindset, a renowned speaker, best-selling author, and Napoleon Hill Institute Global Certified Coach. With a mission to empower individuals to unlock their full potential, Kevin has impacted thousands of lives through his transformative insights and coaching programs. Through L2 Mindset, Kevin teaches the timeless principles of Napoleon Hill, guiding others to embrace self-love, self-leadership, and a mindset of unlimited possibilities. Kevin is dedicated to guiding individuals toward personal transformation and extraordinary results in every aspect of their lives. And it's why he's here today. And Kevin and I have a big announcement to make, but we're going to kind of tease it a little bit, Kevin. We're not going to tell him just yet. We're going to kind of tease it. But first of all, y'all got to acknowledge the dope jacket he's wearing right now, because that jacket looks good. Kevin, my friend, what's going on?
I appreciate it, Kenny, brother. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. It's been a couple of years at least since I've been on here with you, so I'm excited to be back.
That's right. I'm going to call him the new and improved Kevin. Not that he was, sloughing off back then, but Kevin was a member of a segment that I used to do called the Millennials, because we wanted to get deep insight about a generation of people who approach work perhaps in different and innovative and creative ways. They approach relationships that way. They approach community that way, and service that way, and faith that way. And so wanted to bring him and several other people who have been on the platform. But we're so glad to have you back this afternoon. Kevin, I said some really, really nice things to you. And I want to start with your brainchild, which is L2 Mindset, and why that is so meaningful for you, and how did you decide to use that as the nucleus of the work that you're doing right now?
Yeah, Kenny, man, it's very simple, man. I think we all have a lot of baggage that we carry from life, experiences that we've dealt with, some better than others, but we've all been dealt, challenges in life. And because of that and our upbringing, a lot of people that I've worked with, including myself, have struggled with anxiety, lack of confidence, lack of discipline. And what I've realized in working with people who have achieved really great things is that they don't lack confidence. They don't lack discipline. And so L2 Mindset stands for love yourself, lead yourself, which is what that stands for me is, again, the love yourself is about the confidence, the lead yourself is about the discipline. I believe in my years of working with people that if somebody can build that healthy foundation, then they can accomplish anything that they want, but it starts there. Without those two key principles, they're not going to have sustainable success in their lives.
Yeah, to your point, a lot of people will scapegoat others in situations and circumstances in their lives, and they'll place fault and blame and accuse things and people for why they have not done what they're wanting to do, or why they have not found success, or why they feel like they've been limited in some way. And the reality is, Kevin, you and I both realize, and we embrace the notion that the person's biggest challenge really kind of lies between these two things right here, and everything that's right in this little space right here, and what we tell ourselves. And the idea that so much of what we fail to realize is that our success is really in our grasp. Now, let me get the elephant out the room first, and then we're going to kind of fly with this thing. I'm going to call the elephant in the room. The people that are listening this afternoon say, yeah, that's easy for you to say because you've been able to do this, that, and the other, or you know this person, that person, the other person. How do you talk to people who really have significant anxiety about their lives and significant self-doubt about being able to move forward in a positive direction? What do you say to people?
Yeah, Kenny, I've been fortunate in my life. I say that, I didn't grow up with a lot of wealth. It wasn't that I had the nicest car when I got into high school. I mean, I had a beat up 1994 Suzuki Steam. I mean, it was nothing nice. But anyway, like I always had a roof over my head and I always had food on the table. We had what we needed, but we didn't always have what we wanted. Now, that being said, I know that story is better than a lot of other people. So I can't say that I know what you're going through if you were, in foster care, or if you were homeless, or if you, or if you deal with, parents who were drug addicts and things like. I've never gone through that, so I can't tell you that. But what I can tell you is that there are plenty of people out there like me, like you, that have surpassed unbelievable odds, things that have been incredible in a negative way that have happened to them and for them. And I say to them and for them is because in every adversity, there's a seed of opportunity, right? And that's one of the principles that Napoleon Hill talks about. In every adversity, there is a seed of equal opportunity, meaning that everything that happens to us has the ability, if with your perspective, to make it happen for you, meaning what opportunity, what lesson can you learn from what happened to you, right? And so what I would say is that what happened to you or for you, again, what happened to you doesn't determine your future. Your past doesn't determine your future. Like it only does if you decide to stay there. If you decide to stay, play the role of a victim, you have to take full responsibility for your life. And that means that what happened, it's done. It's in the past. All you have control over is this moment in front of you. And you can choose to stay angry. You can choose to stay in a negative frame of mind, or you can make the decision that you're going to start thinking differently, acting differently, moving forward, so that you can start moving in the direction of what you want. Because if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting what you've always got. And it was Jim Rohn who said that many, many years ago. And it's still as true today as it was back then. So again, you can be a victim of your circumstances, whether current circumstances or past circumstances, and where you are is as far as you're ever going to go. Or you can choose to make a decision that you will start moving differently, moving forward, that you're not going to be a victim, that you're going to take responsibility for your thoughts and actions, and that you're going to do things that you've never done before so that you can get results that you've never experienced before.
You're so right, Kevin. I'm blown away when I see stories of overcoming, stories of achievement, stories of extraordinary and remarkable courage, where people have pressed through things that I can't even begin to imagine. I think about people who are single and double amputees who climb mountains. And I've never climbed a mountain before. I don't think I ever will. I've seen stories of, that's why I like commencement time so much, because I see these articles about, I saw one recently, a former, I think he was a former baggage handler, or he worked in the airport somewhere, becomes a pilot. And you're like, wait a minute. How does that happen? And it's not that people who bag can't be intelligent enough, but I think we have a tendency in life to stereotype people. And because we typecast people, sometimes people embrace our typecasting of them. And I think that speaks to what you're talking about right now, that if people have the ability to just see a little bit of light shine through the crack of their lives, then maybe they can move on to the next thing. The word transformative means a lot to both you and me. Tell me what it means to you.
To transform means to completely just change, in my mind, everything about you, literally from what you do, but it starts with the way that you think. And that's the biggest difference. The people who are achieving bigger things than me, they don't have something that I don't have. I believe if somebody else is doing something and I really want to do it, I have the ability to do it. All I have to decide is whether I'm willing to pay the price, the time, effort, money, whatever it is. And so to transform to me means that you're willing to do the work required to change your thinking, because one of my favorite authors, Dr. Joe Dispenza, said, your personality creates your personal reality. And so our personal realities, our results, our circumstances, the way we live, the way people treat us, that's our circumstances. And so our personality, the way we think, feel, and act, created that. We attracted that. And so if I were to transform myself, my personality, the way that I think, feel, and act on a daily basis, my circumstances will transform as well, because they're nothing but a mirror to ourselves.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And that word is among my words, and I love words, one of the most significant and powerful words out there, because you're not just talking about experiencing something. All of us have experiences in life. All of us, or a lot of us, I should say, we go through the formal education process. Some of us are members of faith communities. All of us are members of families in some form or fashion. You know, people get involved in clubs and organizations, teams and communities, et cetera, et cetera. And we can have the experience, but are we changed by the experience? And for me, that's transformation. Does that athlete transform him or herself into a better athlete through the regimen that they adopt in terms of how they think about themselves? Does that student become a better student that propels them towards greater and higher success because they're transformed through the educational process, not just simply, and even as a classroom instructor, I used to always say, students can learn outside the classroom for a lot less money than they pay to come to school. They really can. I mean, there are people who have started, multi-million-dollar industries without high school diplomas. And so that's not what it is. It has to be, and it's not one or the other. It has to be each person looking at themselves, doing an introspection with regards to where you are and where you'd like to be. And then, as you said, making that determination that you want to move towards that next level. Kevin, you've been inspired and inspiring for a long time. And, before we give this big reveal, because I said I was going to tease people a little bit, Kevin and I have a big announcement to make, folks. It is a big announcement. You're not going to want to miss it, so don't turn your dial. In fact, right now, you need to share the link so that everybody listening today, or everybody who has the possibility of listening that you might even know, doesn't miss the big announcement, because we'll have a big announcement coming up in just a few minutes. But you have such a tremendous backstory. I mean, very successful career in the financial industry as it related to real insurance and marketing that brand and yourself, and embracing the tools of success and studying successful people in that area and being mentored by people who really carried you from one level to the next. And then you stepped away from it. Give us the Cliff Notes version of that story.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say a lot of people thought I was crazy by doing this. I remember there was a guy who was one of the top producers at the company I was selling for, and he texted me out of the blue, and I told him, hey, I'm no longer with the company. And he basically just asked me about what I was doing now. And long story short, he's like, man, you're crazy. I've been doing this for 40 years. You don't think I've thought about going to do something else, but who's going to pay you or me for coaching them or speaking or whatnot? And in my mind, I'm like, hopefully someone, because I already made the decision. I'm not backing out now. But here's the thing, Kenny, I was doing well in the financial business, in the insurance business, and I went to a seminar in LA in 2017 by a gentleman called Bob Proctor, who has since passed. But Bob Proctor was a phenomenal teacher of the principles of success, of prosperity, of Napoleon Hill's principles. And I remember sitting in that ballroom at the hotel in LA, and he was talking about the mind and the subconscious mind and how it works and the power of it and how to reprogram it and all these things that I had never really heard before. And I just remember him asking, what do you want? Like, what do you really want for your life, for your business, for your career? And in that moment, I mean, I don't know how to explain. I just felt it in my heart that I want to do what he's doing. I just love the information. I just love the way he was inspiring people, the way he was changing lives in that room and all over the world. They were streaming virtually anyway. I just remember I just had this immense feeling of I want to do what he's doing. And the moment I got back to my office on Monday, panic set in, fear set in. I was like, what am I thinking? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm not doing this. I'm making good money. I have a great business. I have some great clients. Business is growing. There's just no logical reason whatsoever as to why I should make a change like that. And I told myself that it was the right choice to stay where I was at. And I remember, Kenny, that I would bump into people out on the street and they would tell me about how proud they were of my successes and how well I was doing after that. And I just had this negative feeling every time somebody would say something like that, because in my mind, I'm thinking, Kevin, you're a coward. Everybody's saying how well you're doing, but you know you're not doing what you're meant to do, what you really want to do. And so it took some time for me to get there, but eventually I made the decision, you know what? I'm leaving the insurance business. I'm leaving the financial business, and I'm going to go do this. And the reason I did that was because I got this idea that if I'm 80 years old, looking back at my life, and I didn't make that decision, I didn't make that jump, I didn't take that leap, I would massively, massively regret that. And that was something I couldn't live with. But I also decided that if I made the leap and I'm 80 years old looking back and things didn't work out and I failed at this, I would be okay with that outcome too. Because at least I gave myself a shot. I believed in myself enough to make that decision, to take that leap. And to me, that's part of what L2 mindset, the love yourself part, stands for, which is believing in yourself, loving yourself enough that you're willing to take risks, to take chances on doing the things that you really want to do and not settling for anything that you don't want. And so Bob Proctor inspired me greatly into making that leap. And I had to go against a lot of resistance from people. But at the end of the day, it's my life. And I believe that it's, we only get one life, and you have to do what you have to do to live your life to the fullest. And I do believe that God gave us all different talents and skills. And I have the talent and the skills to do what I'm doing now. I have a gift to empower people and get them to think bigger and think more about themselves than they currently have been. And so it would be a disservice for me to be doing anything else.
Yeah, wow. There are a lot of people listening this afternoon, I'm sure, that are connecting with you in one way or another. Maybe they are that person that took the leap. Maybe they're the person that is contemplating taking the leap and don't quite know what to do. And maybe they're that person who, unfortunately, is at a point where they're looking back now and it's too late to take the leap. Some people say it's never too late. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But I think that realistically and very practically, there are some things that we need to do now, as I always say, before it's too late. So, and we're not talking about an impulsive kind of thing either, Kevin. We're not just saying, you just heard Bob speak and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this. And then the next thing you just start pulling up stuff. No, you have to strategically think about the next step too. Yes. That's real important. Well, I don't know if I've teased them enough, but I'm going to go ahead and roll it out because I am just excited about this moment. Kevin and I have had a long-term friendship here in the city of Huntsville. I consider him a brother, and I'm so inspired personally by what I've seen him be able to do, not just in the space he's in now. This is where he is now. I met him when he was doing insurance, and he had youthfulness, he had energy, he had a vision for himself, and that was always very impressive to me. He seemed to be somebody who soaked it all up, and then in soaking it all up was able to filter what was useful and what was not. And Kevin was one of those people that I use often. I use you as an example in some of my networking sessions when I'm talking about networking for success, because Kevin, everywhere I showed up, Kevin was showing up. I know he was showing up places I wasn't, because he was consistently making the connections and making the case for himself. Again, you got to be an advocate for yourself. You got to believe in yourself. And a lot of people are held down by what other people believe in them. So Kevin and I have been talking. I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but this was a year of transition for me as well. And we'll talk more about that later. And I'm teasing people again, but a little later. We'll talk about that later. But Kevin and I have been talking about doing some work together, and we have landed on a project that we will be doing together. I'm going to give him the opportunity to share what's coming up and tell you a little bit about what you can anticipate.
Man, I am so pumped about this opportunity. I'm just going to say it's an honor to be able to do this with you, because we've talked about how one of the first times that I met you in person, you were speaking at the Chamber of Commerce. And one of the things that you said that caught my attention, you were sharing a quote by Will Rogers that said, even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there, right? And I remember that room. I remember you speaking. I remember that memory so vividly. And so I saw you as this giant, which you are, which you still are. And now to get to collaborate with you, I mean, it's an honor, brother. And so I am super excited, right? Because you've been doing leadership development, executive coaching, speaking on so many different topics for so many years. And I've been doing it for a few years now. And we're taking both of our passions and combining them. And we're taking some topics that I believe are extremely important. They're just important, especially right now in this moment. I believe that, what I was talking about earlier with transforming ourselves that you asked me about, right? I believe that that's something that we ought to be doing daily, weekly, monthly. It's not something that, hey, I'm just going to go to a conference and then I'm going to transform and my life is set for the rest of my life. Like that, it doesn't work that way. Transformation happens. Yeah, there might be an event, a one-time event that propels you in a different direction, but if you don't keep the momentum going, it's not going to happen, right? So we are setting this platform for people to come together in August, and toward the end of August, I believe it's Friday, August 23rd, right?
Yes.
And we're going to do an event together. We're going to do this intimate event. This is not about having hundreds of people in a room jumping around and you're not making connections with them. You're not building relationships. You're not really learning because there's so many distractions going around. No, this is an opportunity for people who are hungry for success, who are hungry to become better leaders, to become better. And when I say better leaders, I don't mean that you lead people in a company, in a business. You might, but it might be that you want to lead yourself better. And by so doing, you lead your family better, your community better. So we will be doing an all-day event, 9 a.m. to about 3 p.m. And we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence. That's your part, Kenny. That's emotional intelligence. Like, are you responding or are you reacting to what's happening in your life? How are you responding to the events and the people in your life? Because if you're just reacting, you're not in control. You're not in control. So that's your part. I'm not going to go deep into that. What I'm excited about is what I'm going to be talking about. I'm excited about that, but I'm excited about what I'm going to be talking about, which is about identity shift. Identity shift, right? Our identity is the way that we see ourselves. The way we see ourselves, what we believe about ourselves, what we believe we're capable of. That dictates every single result in our lives. If we believe that we're good enough to start that business and succeed in that business and have a bigger salary or a bigger business, more revenue, we will take the actions necessary in order to achieve those things. But most people have an identity of lack, of limitation. I'm not good enough, blank. We can all fill that out. Yeah. We all have something, some limitation in our nervous system, in our subconscious mind about not being enough something, whether that's, I would go networking, but I don't dress good enough as Kenny does, right? I would go networking, but I don't know anybody. Well, that's the point of it, right? I would go start this business, but I don't have the connections, or I'm not an extrovert, whatever it is, right? That's just a limitation. And so going back to what I shared earlier about your personality creates your personal reality, your identity is that seed that is such a strong part of your personality. That's what it is, your beliefs about yourself. And so if you want to change the results that you're getting in your life, in your business, in your career, in your finances, in your relationships, in every single area of your life, you have to be willing to work on your identity. And that starts with deciding what it is that you want for your life, and then deciding who you need to become, which is the bigger piece. And then working every single day on becoming the type of person that attracts the success that you're looking for. So it's going to be a phenomenal event. I cannot even wait. I mean, lives will be transformed. People will make meaningful relationships, a relationship that will probably lead to them getting more business and building business, starting business. This is going to be people who want to play at the next level. Nobody's attending this that is just ready to settle and hang it up. That's not the kind of people that we're going to be attracting, that we attract. And so you want to be in the room. That's all I got to say. You want to be in the room. So I think I've said enough. I'll throw it back at you.
Yeah. The tagline on this event is be bold, be impactful, be there. And that's what we want for you. And we're going to provide more information for you about that. Just a couple of other quick things that we need to do to get a link to you so you can register and stuff like that. But we're going to have a registration incentive available for people that want to register early. And early registration will go through the latter part of July. And we've got something really, really good for you. We both believe that we have the ability to grow within ourselves. And the wonderful thing about both Kevin and myself is that we're unselfish people who want to share as much as we can with others. We believe that whom much is given, much is required. We do it in a very humble way. We do it in a very passionate way. We reach out to people and we simply say, listen, if you just take the time to invest in sharing this space for a very short period of time and use that as part of your journey towards personal growth and success, that we promise you that you will have a huge return on your investment. Now, let me be clear, return on investment is not instant. Nothing happens instantly. Kevin hasn't gotten to where he's gotten to instantly, and neither have I. We've put the work in, and we don't begrudge that. We understand that that's part of the process, but it begins right here. What do you want? What do you really want? Yeah. We could talk about what you're doing, but what do you want? Yeah. What do you want that you're not really going after? What do you really want that other people are telling you, oh, you can't do that, you can't do that, and why are you trying to even talk about something like that? So we're going to give you some real perspective on how to break through and take yourself to a place where you can do further assessment and evaluation. Kevin Fernandez, I mean, what an amazing conversation. He's the founder of L2 Mindset. He's a renowned speaker, best-selling author, and Napoleon Hill Institute Global Certified Coach. He and I will be teaming up for transformative leadership, combining emotional intelligence and identity shift for maximum impact on Friday, August the 23rd, starting at 9 a.m. More information to follow. It'll take place right here in Huntsville, by the way. So, and you're welcome to come from wherever you are. You're listening all over the place. There are people listening all over the world today, Kevin. If you want to come and join us on August the 23rd, come and join us. We have something for you. Kevin, thank you for being here. Tell people how they can find out more about your work, your website, social media presence, anything like that.
Yeah, Kevin E. Fernandez on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and L2mindset.com is my website. They can find more information there. And so I'm just so excited. People should definitely travel if they have to attend this event. I believe without a shadow of a doubt that it will be worth the time investment tenfold what they will be investing. So I have no doubt about that, and I look forward to seeing you all there. And Kenny, thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, sir, my brother. I look forward to talking to you real soon.
Yes, sir. Have a great
All
one.
right. Kevin Fernandez joining us this afternoon. He's the founder of L2 Mindset. He is somebody you absolutely should know, and you should grow your relationship with Kevin Fernandez. He is an amazing person. He's been an amazing person in my life, and I'm honored to share the platform with him on this particular event. It's called Transformative Leadership, Combining Emotional Intelligence and Identity Shift for Maximum Impact. It takes place on Friday, August 23rd, right here in Huntsville. We'll have some more information for you real soon about how to register for this event. And we'll start pushing that out almost immediately so that you can know what's going on. I'll be back in just a moment to tell you about what's happening next week. It's Second Chance. I'm Kenny Anderson. Hope you're having a great day.
Perhaps you have some ideas, comments, or suggestions that you would like to share, or perhaps you'd like to be a guest on the broadcast. We'd love to hear from you. Please feel free to email Kenny Anderson at mxlife@aol.com, or you can like us on the Second Chance Facebook page. That's 2ND Chance. And now, back to more of Second Chance with Kenny Anderson.
Thank you to my guest, Robert X. Golphin, today. What a great way to start the broadcast. Dr. Yohuru Williams joining me this afternoon. What an amazing conversation there as well, along with Donna Green-Goodman, nutritionist, author, and my sister, and my brother, Kevin Fernandez, rolling out the red carpet today, inviting all of you to join he and I as we provide transformative leadership, combining emotional intelligence and identity shift for maximum impact on August the 23rd. Starts at 9, ends at 2 or 3. I forgot what time we said. But it's a short-term commitment for maximum return on the investment. We'll have more information about that for you. On next Sunday, it's What's Going On, a special 5th Sunday edition of the broadcast for What's Going On. My guests will be David Person, Dr. Keith Burton, and Reverend Derek Green. We look forward to seeing you at that time to provide information and insight about lots of things that you're probably talking about right now. In the meantime, have a great rest of the week. And remember, as always, knowledge is better than riches. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Second Chance. We hope that the information that was shared has been a blessing to you and that your life will be enriched as a result of it. We'd love to hear from you. So please send your email comments to Kenneth Anderson at mxlife@aol.com. That's mxlife@aol.com. And check out our Facebook page, 2ND Chance. That's 2ND Chance. In the meantime, have a great week, and we'll talk to you again next week. Good day.